Denzel Washington, widely regarded as one of the greatest actors of all time, is known not only for his impeccable acting skills, but also for his occasional yet thought-provoking commentary on social issues. During an interview following his role in the 2017 legal drama Roman J. Israel Esquire, the interviewer unsurprisingly shifted the conversation to topics such as systemic inequality, the criminal justice system, and the disproportionately high incarceration rates within the Black community. During the discussion, Washington chose to focus on the impact of broken homes and fatherlessness on shaping the futures of young boys. He argued that these personal and familial factors often have a more significant influence on a child's development than the broader societal system frequently blamed for their struggles. Washington suggested that while systemic issues could certainly play a role, the foundation laid at home was even more critical. He concluded his remarks by saying, "If the system is rigged, then all the more reason not to help it."
And Roman delves into the issues around the legal system. Do you think we've made any headway in the legal system?
I think it's more important to make headway in our own house. By the time the system comes into play, the damage is done.
Yeah.
You know, I was in Chicago a couple of 3-4 weeks ago, and we saw these little kids on bikes with masks on the side of their head, like 5 or 6 of them. And the driver said, "Yeah, they're little yummies." I said, "Who?" He said, "Little yummies. Look up, Google Little Yummy." Little Yummy was an 11-year-old murderer.
Wow.
And you look at his picture, you'll see the headshot of him, and he's like this. And he got murdered at 11 by a 14-year-old.
Wow.
Who's doing life now, and a 16-year-old.
That makes no sense.
You blame the system? Where was his father? The system is rigged, but why? All the more reason not to help it.
In other words, if a system is genuinely flawed or biased against a particular group, it becomes even more important for individuals within that group to avoid behaviors that not only lead to negative outcomes, but also reinforce negative attitudes towards them. Denzel's words were the first thing that came to mind after I learned about the horrific incident in Leicester Square where an 11-year-old girl was stabbed.
Yohan Pataru, 32, is accused of attacking the child, a tourist who was visiting London with her mum, yesterday afternoon. He appeared at Westminster Magistrates Court today, charged with attempted murder.
You know, in this period of intense debates surrounding immigration, with public perception growing increasingly negative towards migrants, I can't help but think that such events are doing nothing but reinforcing biases and reservations concerning immigration. Recent protests in the UK certainly sparked some unfair rhetoric towards migrants, and there is justifiable concern about the broad generalizations being made by some on the right. However, incidents involving migrants who have committed serious crimes, such as injuring or murdering innocent people, do little to improve public perceptions or counteract these negative views. In the last 3 years, we've witnessed an increase in these harrowing attacks. In March 2022, an asylum seeker who had lied about his age stabbed a young aspiring soldier to death over an argument about an e-scooter. He had been flagged as a terrorist a year earlier. In December 2022, Rabaz Mohammed stabbed an 18-year-old university student because he wanted to be deported. Mohammed had arrived in the UK legally, and he was staying in a taxpayer-funded hotel at the time of the crime. In October 2023, Ahmed Alid, a Moroccan asylum seeker, murdered a pensioner by stabbing him 6 times, claiming that the attack was in protest against Israel and the Gaza conflict. A month later, Obert Moyo, who had lived illegally in the UK for 2 decades, murdered his partner, Perseverance Nkube, in front of her children. He had a history of violence and was already unlicensed after committing a previous violent attack on another woman while living in Brighton. Perseverance's family asserted that had Moyo been deported, Percy's children would still have a mother. In June 2023, Valdo Calacane, a dual citizen of Guinea-Bissau and Portugal, murdered 3 people in Nottingham. The list goes on. What is even more troubling about these cases is that most are committed in broad daylight and at complete random. The fact that such violent acts occur so openly and seemingly without fear of repercussions is telling. More importantly, why do many of these perpetrators feel so emboldened to commit these heinous acts, especially when they're in a foreign nation when one might expect them to be more cautious? This is not intended to add to the sensationalist narrative surrounding migration, and taking this stance doesn't imply ignoring the racist and occasionally ethnocentric rhetoric emerging from some on the right. But it is crucial that those in positions of authority have conversations because the general public needs assurance. Negative feelings about immigration have been building up over many years, and there seems to be increasing support for reducing immigration levels. Most common objections to high migration levels include the strain on social services, concerns about cultural integration, a rise in antisocial behavior, increased crime rates, and changes to community dynamics.
Parties have been talking about immigration, but what does the public think? Well, an exclusive poll for Sky News has found that across the country, 43% of people asked thought that immigration has a negative impact on British society. That's compared to 35% here who say it has a positive impact. So clear difference there.
In other words, immigration, once touted as a universally positive force, appears to have become a major source of societal strain. If diversity truly is our strength, as we're endlessly told, why do most of our diverse cities also rank among the most dangerous? London, for example, which has the highest proportion of migrants among UK regions, with over 40% of its residents born abroad, has become so unsafe that people are increasingly cautious about talking on the phone in public or displaying their jewelry. While correlation doesn't always imply causation, it's naive and intellectually dishonest to ignore such glaring patterns. Dismissing these concerns as merely racist will not make these cities safer. I had to get out of London. My friends mock me and say, I live in such a dead part of the UK, but I don't mind. London, number one, was too expensive. Everything was just overly pricey and expensive. And number two, it did have a vibe of unsafety. It's like everyone out for themselves. There was no community spirit anymore. I had to move out. My mental health thanks me greatly for it. It's deeply unfair that while some immigrants come seeking a better life, commit to working hard and invest in themselves to contribute positively to their new home, others flout rules and act menacingly. The negative actions of a few tarnish the perception of all immigrants, overshadowing the sincere efforts of those who are dedicated to positively shaping their new environments. That's why immigrants should be at the forefront of addressing these issues. We should be the first to speak up, forcefully and boldly, against those who violate the rules of the land. The privilege of immigration carries with it a tacit agreement to uphold and enhance the social fabric of the host nation. Anything less undermines the very system of openness and opportunity from which they are benefiting. It is not merely about coexistence, but about active, positive, and lawful engagement with the broader society. Those who are granted entry into a nation have a responsibility to engage positively and constructively with their new community. Immigrants, perhaps even more so than native-born citizens, should strive to be net positives in their adopted society. At the very least, this means committing to abiding by the laws and contributing meaningfully, financially, socially, and culturally.
And why aren't you successful, Eric?
I think one way of answering this question is, I don't know. It feels like a trap to answer the question. I would say that our culture is very clear that if we want to survive, we have to do really, really well and we have to contribute back. So as a diaspora culture, in part, our strategy is over-succeed, over-contribute to your host society. Otherwise, we can't make our equation work. So in part, this is how we live. We live by being a net benefit to the societies in which we reside.
This is not a matter of respectability politics, as some may contend, but with the rights and opportunities that come with being part of a new society, there also comes a responsibility to strive to be a positive force within it, rather than a liability or burden. I'm not saying that racism is justified and broad generalizations are justified or okay, but at the end of the day, stereotypes don't come out of thin air. And if we keep seeing these patterns and these incidents happen where, you have immigrants engaging in antisocial behavior, murders and being locked up for life, in this country, and our taxes are funding, the prison systems and whatever, then is it really fair? And my answer is no, it's not fair.